jotenkin tuntuu siltä tällä hetkellä, että tämä ei ole loppu, vaan nyt me ollaan jossain siinä, että tästä alkaa jotain uudenlaista. Tämä ISEAS ei enää ollut mun väitöskirjatutkimuksen sisältöä. Tämä on jo ehkä jatkotutkimusta, koska tästäkin kyllä kirjoitetaan tutkimusartikkeleita. Ja tässä myös jotenkin todentui semmoinen niin kuin ihan uudella tavalla myös, mitä se yhteistyö laajemmassa merkityksessä voi olla. Et me tehtiin yhteistyötä eri luonnon elementtien kanssa. Me tehtiin yhteistyötä taiteen ja tieteen välissä, mutta tällä kertaa ISEAksessa myös asuu nämä yhteisön jäsenet. Eli meillä oli Franklin yliopiston opiskelijat täällä mukana. Heitä oli yhteensä 15 plus opettaja. Ja he asuivat koko ajan meidän kanssa. He söivät joka päivä aamupalan meidän kanssa. He tulivat joogaamaan aamulla meidän kanssa. He söivät lounasta meidän kanssa. He osallistuvat kaikkiin 3 eri työpajaan. He söivät illallista meidän kanssa. Ja kaikki tämä teki jälleen kerran vähän niin kuin uuden tilanteen tähän meidän ISEAkseen, uuden kerroksen. Koskaan aikaisemmin me ei olla sen yhteisön jäsenten kanssa oltu näin tiiviisti yhdessä. Ja on ihan käsittämätöntä, että viikon aikana tuntui, että rakkaus vain lisääntyi. Että kaikki meni niin hyvin. Ihmiset lähti silleen pois ISEAksesta eilen sanoen, että tämä on ollut niin kuin elämää mullistava kokemus. Että tämä on niin kuin, että he ovat ymmärtäneet jotain vielä enemmän, mitä taiteella on mahdollisuus tehdä tässä yhteiskunnassa. Koska taide on nimenomaan se, joka avaa niitä portteja semmoiseen niin kuin rationaalisen ajattelun ulkopuolella olevaan ajatteluun, että kun se tieto oikeasti tavoittaa meidän ihmisyyden ytimen, että missä me ollaan, mitä me ollaan tekemässä ja myös, että meidän oikeasti on toimittava ja osattava toimia yhdessä. Että se on ihan vääjäämätön avain siihen kehitykseen, mitä ihmiskunta voi tehdä, on se yhdessä toimiminen. Meillä oli 3 eri työpajaa ja jokainen työpaja suunnitteli itsenäisesti työpajan kulun. Taide ja tiede limittyi niissä kaikissa todella valloittavalla tavalla.
Nouse maasta mammoseni, akkaamman tereenalainen väkinesi, voiminesi, avukseni, armokseni, tuekseni, turvakseni, seisomaan.
A workshop we brainstormed and worked out a morning activity where we have 3 phases. The first, we start out with participants, us included, looking as we walk, looking for something that we find along the way, not pulling off trees or anything, but we find along the way that speaks to us or says something about ourselves. And then we are also trying to record sounds we hear in the forest. For example, you can hear birds in the background, or the sounds our feet make as we walk through the forest, or leaves rustling. And we tried to do this. And then we stopped at along the way where there's a fallen tree that makes a sort of naturally occurring work of art. And there we shared what we found in the forest and had a little discussion about it. We then, as we move on, we kind of are using Ossi to talk about all of his enormous knowledge of the forest. And so just about everywhere we go, there's something like mushrooms that have a garlic scent and that can be used in food, or the symbiosis between acorn trees and oak trees, or the many kinds of mushrooms that we find, and what you can use to draw with in the or paint with in the forest, and how pigments can be made.
So this area has been managed really nicely, like that we have hazelnuts growing between oaks, and I think this is an excellent thing that the Finnish forest government people have been doing here by cutting the birches and alders that would otherwise shade the hazelnuts especially, and also make the canopy of oak trees smaller, so now they can have big canopies of oaks, which means they can produce more acorns and more light for these hazelnuts. So we maybe make some paint from this color for here, and while picking mushrooms, it's always good to try to get it as whole as possible. So, for example, amanithas, it's important you see, the pulp. So, if you just would take like this and you would gather some edible mushrooms, you could misidentify easily if not looking the stem also.
Where we're using peat in a bog to make drawings, and as I said, I have my outline of the of the course the workshop activity this morning, and what I did was to find an oak leaf and to dip it into the peat, place it on the paper, place the paper on top of it, and rub until I get an imprint of the oak leaf. And so, of course, I use the other side, which has more impressions. And then we'll close this workshop by going to another place that is slightly different in terms of the geological formation. Ossi and Alisa have called it the stadium, but there's like a big outcropping of rock, and it's covered with this beautiful silvery kind of moss. And there we will share our sounds that we've collected from the forest to have a kind of forest symphony, and we'll do some other musical interventions as well. And then with that, we'll close and we'll go back. Well, it's kind of, as Katja always says with this, you have to expect the unexpected. But no, the participants, the fellow artists, students are very receptive, and they've seemed to be enjoying it and gaining a tremendous amount of knowledge about the forest and about themselves. And so, yes, I think that I'm quite satisfied, and I think that Ossi and Elisa probably are too. So I think that yes, it's been great, and the weather has been really, really on our side, and we couldn't ask for anything more, really.
It's I think good way for initial environmental education for a group of students with very different subjects who they study, and quite new to the forest issues mostly. So it's been nice to see how people interact with our art workshops and learn things in the same time. So I think this is successful way of communicating.
I guess also paid attention how this place looks like a stage. Like it was like a big stadium stage. So we've been calling the place a stadium ever since. And it kind of reminds of places where our golden age fine artists and music composers went to get inspiration for their works. One of our exercises is to listen in spheres. We all stand quietly, stand still, and then we listen nearest sounds we can hear. These are probably our own heartbeat, breathing, our fingers touching our clothes. Perhaps we might move a little where we stand. Next we listen a sphere around us, sounds close by us. We listen to the sounds just outside our bodies. What is happening in the nearest sphere around us? Then we listen a little bit further. Are there birds sitting on the branches of close by trees? How are the leaves crackling in the wind? How does the wind move the leaves, and how does it sound? We slowly concentrate in spheres further, more far from our bodies, from our ears. Finally, we listen to the furthest sounds we can hear. Can we hear the traffic somewhere far on the roads? How does the wind sound? What is the furthest sound of the wind we can hear? And by observing these spheres around us, we understand, we sense our place in the soundscape. Kalliolle kukkulalle rakennan minä majani. Tule matkaamaan se mun kanssani. Jollen minä sinua saa, niin lähden.
I don't know if you do, but if you explain how trees work, in a way you can say that these trees are blind and deaf, but they have other senses that are pretty highly developed. That you can think of a tree that okay, it's deaf and blind, but when it's there, it's constantly sensing what's happening around with sort of little fingers, whatever you want to call them, or million nostrils. And then easy exercise to tell the people is that okay, now imagine that you are a tree and stand there for 3 minutes, eyes closed, and try to experience and just drawing about these ideas, also this thing about symbiosis and sort of reciprocity, how species coexist and depend on each other is one thing for us to understand it on the level of normal knowledge information. Yeah, I know from biology. But then to do even the simplest physical exercise to understand it in more holistic manner can be helpful.
This workshop is make it for you live 3 part of them as part with something external, the idea where we are, how's the relation of Finland with the forest. After that we are doing some movement exercise. The first part is facilitated for Sylvia. The second part is about embody this idea is with me, and we work with the trees, and at the same time after that we do with the tree a little meditation connection with the forest, and after that we do the name is partnering, when in 2 persons and one is blind and the other is the guide. Okay, it's like prepare to walk blind in this surface, and we use the idea of solidarity and support in the other person. And the third part is from Mario, and it's like a ceremony. It's connected with your feelings and your desire and your feeling in this moment. And we have some connection with the emotions, with what you desire for your future. It's a ceremony when you have the opportunity to express yourself, to desire yourself, and live out bad things.
As Ugo was saying, today the morning is made up of 3 different parts, but we think they integrate pretty well, because I'm giving you some notions about who owns the forest in Finland, and I think it is strictly connected to the topic, which is forest. You know, I mean, the topic of ISEAS is forest. And I think the reason why Katja picked up this theme is that forest is really an important part of the life of Finns, and it really shapes their identity as well. Being an Italian, when I came to Finland for the first time, I was really impressed by the close connection that Finns in general have with nature and forest. I can't really say it's the same in Italy. First of all, I mean, I live in an urban area, I live in a city, and for me going to the forest would take at least 1 hour or even more by car. So I really need to go either to the Apennine or to the Alps. And actually since I was a child, I didn't really spend much time in the forest, but when I came to Finland I really started to understand how being in nature makes me feel. And I think it really impacts, you know, your well-being and your mental health in a way. So the main topic we are talk about today, it's ownership because I think it's important to know that Finland is the most forested country in Europe. So 70% of the surface of Finland is covered with forest. And that means that it's, I mean, at least 10 times more than the average in Western Europe. And I think the interesting thing about forest is that it's not owned by the government. It's or partially, it is owned by the government, but the majority of the shares belong to private owners. So forest private owners, families who are given, who have, normally it's about 30 hectares of land, and they have to follow some rules concerning the management of the forest, but it's their own forest somehow. So 60% is private owned, around 30% it's owned by the government, 9% it's owned by company, and there is a small minority owned by other entities. And I don't know if in your countries you do have forests, and I don't know how they are managed and who owns them, but I think it's quite peculiar to know that this is how it is in Finland. And actually it seems that 1 out of 5 families, they are really owning a piece of forest. And interesting enough, the majority of the owners are men, are not really women. Women are a minority among the owners. And what I also think it's interesting is the way men and women manage, although they have guidelines and they need to follow some rules, men and women may have a different approach to forest management. For example, according to some researches, it seems that women, for example, feel that they are not good enough to manage forest, or they don't have enough knowledge to do that. But at the same time, they have more aesthetics, a sense of beauty or a sense of nature conservation. But also what they also have, it's like this sense of property that enables them to really take care, as mostly women can do, about the land they own. This is something we have been discussing a lot. Do you think that owning something makes you more limited, or let you enjoy more freedom that you would normally do? I would really like to hear your thoughts about that.
But like what first comes to mind is like a contract, kind of like a legal,
Okay.
like ownership. Yeah.
Okay. What do you think ownership means to you?
I suppose in a broader sense, it's having control over like what happens to something or what's done with something, whether it be a forest and you control if like trees are cut down or things like that, or a piece of clothing, what will be done with it, and things like that.
Yeah. How about you?
I think it means like to be responsible for a certain thing. I think that in the context of like people in Finland owning the majority of the forest, I think maybe you have more of an incentive to take care of it. And I think that I'm from America, I think that the state also owns a lot of the forest in America, and maybe if there was like personal interest, it would be taken better care of. But also there's a layer of like maybe for monetary purposes, like we destroy the forest and then we can benefit off of that. So I don't know, it's complicated.
Yeah.
I agree with Charlotte, because also in Mongolia, like majority of the forest, like also like the natural resources are owned by the government. And also like with that, there's like a bunch of like corruption going on and all that stuff. So yes, like in broader context, it's a really complicated like issue. Like for me, like ownership, like when I think about like ownership, things that I own, I think I like take it more like with care, like because it's my own. I want to like treat it with like I want it to last it longer.
Yeah.
Like it feels more important than any other stuff. like if it was another person's stuff, like yes, I would take it with care, but I think I would be more careful
with
my
yours.
stuff.
Okay. So yeah.
I was gonna say I feel like I agree with that too. Like, but like I also think there's a lot of people that might not like care as much about their own things. Like, but then like say like if they're wearing their own clothes, like they don't care if it gets dirty because like it's their own and they just have like different like standards, I guess. But then like if they're borrowing someone else's, then they'd be like extra careful with it. So I feel like it kind of depends on the person also, because like being on like knowing that like there's consequences for doing something like on someone else's land is like might make some people act like more respectful, but then I think other people it would make them act less respectful.
Yeah.
And then also like I think in Finland, like it seems like I've been learning that like a lot of the culture is like around like forests and like nature and stuff, which is amazing, and I love that. So I think that like it makes sense for like it to be like personally owned, because like it kind of seems like it's a part of the culture to like take care of like the forest and the wilderness.
We're just selling out our own like nature, and it's like getting exploited, and like you're seeing it gets like destroyed by another one. And they're not really also like doing a conservation after that, so it's just like really sad to see that. And I think the government should like start like a policy, like do better like management, even though it's like basically like steps. It's just like we have different like landscapes and stuff, and like every day it's getting like exploited. Every day I see it getting like destroyed. And also even with like people from Mongolia, they're not treating the nature as respectful as they used to. Like we like in the old times, like people were more respectful, like our culture was dependent on that, but now it's like because almost like half of the people live in the main city, and like we're like really like distorted, like people don't really connect with nature, and it's just like it's really sad. And I think people could, like the governments and also like the citizens could be better at managing.
There could be a difference between a male and a female approach, or do you think it doesn't really matter?
I also think that maybe since historically men have like owned the property like completely, maybe like now with more women owning stuff, it just like it's a different approach. It's not a worse approach, but you're like it's just different.
Yeah.
It comes with like more equality.
After this drumming, this is the thing you have to find, these three things: gratefulness, developing, and letting go. You go mindful around this area and search for three pieces. The one which reminds you what you're grateful of, the one which reminds you what you want to develop, and the one which reminds you what you want to get rid of. And after you have found those pieces, you'll come back here. You'll have as much time as you want to use. But we'll start by drumming, and as I told you, you can stand up, stand still, sit down, keep your eyes closed or open. And I will walk around here a bit. Find something that you have gratitude about yourself. Like, I'm proud of myself because I'm here. I'm proud of myself because I'm able to go abroad to have and do studies or whatever. What is the thing that you are grateful? That you at the moment, at this moment, what is the thing that you have to like, I'm very good. You remind yourself why you are so awesome. Because of this, being mindful, be open with your senses, be open with your feelings, be open with your emotions. I hope that after you have been like discussing about ownership and doing the exercises with Hugo and laughing, you would take this time and concentrate, have the focus only in yourself.
I'm like saturating it. It helps.
Eli meidän työpajan nimi on Sacred Forest, Pyhä metsä. Metsäteemassa kun ollaan. Ensiksi me ollaan nuorille kerrottu, kuinka tämä paikka, jossa me työskennellään, on ISEASen vetäjä Katja Juholalle tosi tärkeä paikka, jonka hän kokee pyhäksi metsäksi, pyhäksi paikaksi. Siirrytään tuossa Mustion linnalta Rakkauden siltaa kohti tätä aluetta ja tehdään semmoinen lenkki sillä alueella, jossa ensiksi tervehditään tämmöistä porttipuuta, valtavan suuria tammia, jotka ovat erittäin vanhoja ja komeita, ja kierretään siellä ja nähdään myöskin kampakeraaminen nuotiopaikka. Saadaan tämmöinen tuntuma tuohon alueeseen. Ja sen jälkeen meille on sitten John ryhmästämme, hän on pitänyt tämmöisen esityksen tutkimusaiheesta, joka liittyy nimenomaan pyhyyteen ja pyhiin paikkoihin suomalaiskansallisissa uskomuksissa tai suomalais-ugrilaisissa, no lähinnä suomalaisissa. Ja silloin kuullaan monia asioita pyhistä paikoista ja rituaaleista ja tavoista, jolla jollakin tavalla on voitu vahvistaa itseä ja toisaalta saada itsellensä onnea ja tästä suomalaisten luontosuhteesta, vedestä, kivistä, pyhistä puista. Ja sitten on keskusteltu siitä, että minkälaisia kokemuksia näillä nuorilla on omissa ympäröistöissään tai omissa perheissään tämmöistä rituaaleista. Onko heitetty onnenlantteja tai onko uskomusta jonkunlaisesta hengistä tai onko näkymyksiä jostain paikoista, jotka ovat pyhiä heidän omissa maissaan. Tämän jälkeen me ollaan tehty tämmöinen keskittymisharjoitus, mentaaliharjoitus ja ehkä myöskin sitten toisaalta tämmöinen taideteos, eli ollaan rakennettu luonnossa olevista lehdistä, risuista, oksista, käpyistä, kukin on tehnyt oman mandalan. Ja siinä hiljaisuudessa tehdessä ehtii paljon ajatella ja nuoret onkin kommentoineet, että on ollut tosi hyvä semmoinen hetki hiljentyä oman asian äärelle ja miten kauniita mandaloita sinne luontoon on syntynyt. Se on eräällä tavalla ollut meidän oma semmoinen lahja, uhrilahja tuolle luonnolle ja toisaalta sitten kun siihen liittyy myöskin se, että se jätetään sinne ja tuulisen pyyhkii pois, niin kuin buddhien hiekkamandalat pyyhitään pois, niin se asia jotenkin jää sinne metsään. Tämän jälkeen me ollaan tehty tämmöinen uhrilehtoharjoitus taikka tehtävä ja siinä on 12 nauhaan nuoret kirjoittaneet ensinnäkin sellaisia toivomuksia hyvistä asioista toisille ihmisille tai asioille, joista he välittävät, mutta toisaalta myös asioita, jollakin tavalla he haluavat itse kehittyä elämässä ja muuttaa omaa elämäänsä. Ja näitä nauhoja me ollaan viety metsään ikään kuin tämmöiseen uhrilehtoon ja jätetty toivomuksina sitten sinne nämä nauhat heilumaan, niin siitä muodostuu semmoinen tosi kaunis kokonaisuus, joka muistuttaa tämmöistä marilaista uhrilehtoa ja tuottaa tämmöisen taideteoksen. Sitten meillä on ollut vielä viimeinen harjoitus, sellainen, jossa ollaan puhuttu metsän peitosta, kuinka metsään voi eksyä ja tulla osaksi metsää ja kuinka sieltä pääsee pois. Ja ollaan tehty tämmöinen taideteos, jossa meidän kehon osat, tällä hetkellä lähinnä kädet, ovat jotenkin osa tätä luontokokonaisuutta. Me ollaan palattu sen jälkeen lounaalle ja lounaan jälkeen sitten tehdään vielä tämmöistä yhteistaideteosta, isoa mandalaa, jossa ensimmäinen ryhmä tekee keskustaa, seuraava ryhmä seuraavaa isoa renkulaa ja sitten viimeinen ryhmä perjantaina ulointa reunamaa. Ja tästä syntyy kokonaistaideteos kuivatuista lehdistä, iso yhteinen mandala, josta tulee sitten näyttelyesine myös. Ja tässä harjoituksessa toisaalta saa keskustella, pohditaan niitä päivän teemoja, mutta se on vähän semmoinen samanlainen sosiaalinen hetki kuin naiset neulomassa tai naiset rakentamassa ruokaa. Yhteisöllinen, tullaan tutuksi toinen toistemme kanssa entistä paremmin ja se tuottaa myös sitten tämmöisen taideteoksen, joka jotenkin kokoaa yhteen tämän päivän kaikki teemat.
This is for me like gate. You see these two big trees there. It's like gate, and then we are entering to my favorite spot in this village. And I often come here by myself, and I just start to feel very calm here. And always when I go, I always say hello to my dear tree friend. I'm a little bit like this tree hugger. So this is my old friend. I would say we have known each other at least 400 years. I'm an old lady.
My name is John Björkman, and as Katja already mentioned, I'm a PhD student in folkloristics, which means I research a kind of immaterial culture, oral culture, traditions, beliefs and customs and so on. And I'm just finishing a PhD on sacred or magical sites of Finnish folk belief in this region. Really, it's not really religion. Finns have been part of Christianity for about 800 years. First Catholic, then Lutheran. So this is a kind of belief system that has existed at the side of religion all the time. That is why we call it folk belief, because it is the belief of folk, of normal people, that they kind of generate on their own. It is not a belief which is given by priests or which is written in a holy scripture, but it is the people's own beliefs. For example, I have noticed that these places that were held as especially respected or sacred even, that they are usually between two villages. So it can mean that you don't cut down trees from this forest, then you also don't get in a fight with your neighbor. So it is kind of combined with people's ways of thinking. People believe that Finns in the old times, they held nature as a whole as sacred. This is not true, but it was certain places that were recognized. And I have found about over 100 such places, and I've noticed that I can recognize. I have learned to recognize them. I find first 10, and then I find the next, and this looks like the other ones. There is something similar. It doesn't look exactly the same, but there is something similar. So probably there is a tradition, an understanding of what a sacred place is supposed to look like in nature. And these traditions could be different in different places.
Jag hade möjlighet att delta i ISEAS, eller ISEAS, lite som en utomstående. I början så var jag med och så människorna komma och så hade möjlighet att efter ett par dagar komma tillbaka. Och jag fick se hur hela gruppen och varje persons inre process, hela gruppens dynamik förändrades och växte. Hur deltagarna så att säga från att ha varit kanske ganska fast i tankens värld där vi ofta är, tog stegen ner i hjärtat och levde processen istället för i det rationella tänkande mera via hjärtats visdomscentrum. Det öppnar människan för så mycket mer och det finns möjlighet för helande och utvecklande processer på en helt annan nivå. Det att hela den här gruppen levde tillsammans och gjorde allt tillsammans från mat till morgonövningar och övningar ute i naturen, övningar där man uttryckte sig med hjälp av naturelement på så många olika sätt hade en stor betydelse. Vi har möjlighet att komma långt ensamma, men bara i grupp med gruppens stöd finns det möjlighet för verkligt helande, utvecklande och för nya saker, nya ting att födas. Kanske sånt som vi aldrig har sett förut. ISEAS eller ISEAS, som jag ser det, plantera som frön i de här unga deltagarna, men också i de vuxna. Frön som nu egentligen finns runt omkring i världen. Och de här fröna är som portar kanske mot något nytt potential. Det är ett frö som kan gro och utvecklas till något alldeles nytt. I var och en i ens eget liv på ett eget sätt. Kanske det blir nya riktlinjer i livet, kanske några aha-upplevelser. Men det här är frön som blommar sen när tiden är inne, så att säga. Processer som det här som ISEAS behövs. Mänskligheten behöver det. Som jag ser det så slutar inte ISEAS den sista dagen, utan fortsätter att leva vidare i varje deltagare.
ISEAS on tällä erää ohi ja me ollaan nyt Linus Westerlundin eli meidän videokuvaaja ja dokumentaristin kanssa vielä tässä meidän kotipihalla siirtämässä kaikkea materiaalia, mitä noista mielettömistä työpajoista on kerätty ja koko viime viikon ajalta niin myös. Mä luulen, että mun ja Linuksen kummankin niin semmoinen olotila on tällä hetkellä, että me ollaan aika kiitollisia. Et me itse asiassa puhuttiin sitä, että ympäri tullaan yhteen mennään, että Linuksen kanssa me aloitettiin silloin vuonna 2019 Linus oli eka kerran mukana ISEAksessa. ISEAshan, mun ensimmäinen symposium täällä Mustiolla mä järjestin 2014, ja sitten on ollut 2017 ja 2018. Mutta ensimmäisen kerran mä Linuksen kanssa olen aloittanut tekemään yhteistyön 2019. Ja meidän yhteistyö on ollut aina jotenkin tosi lämminhenkistä ja helppoa. Ehkä toi sana helppo on hyvä. Varmaan se helppous tulee siitä, että me arvostetaan toinen toisiamme ja meidän niin kuin semmoinen yhteistyö sujuu silleen niin kuin ilman, että tarvii jännittää, että miten nämä hommat menee. Ja miksi meillä on täällä dokumenttiryhmä mukana, niin on se, että yhteisötaiteessa se dokumentti, minkä te voitte nähdä nyt, niin näyttää sen niin kuin prosessin, missä tämä tehtiin. Vaikka meillä on nämä upeat niin kuin taideteokset tässä myös mukana, niin silti se prosessi, se yhteistyö, mitä me tällä hetkellä tehtiin lähemmäs 30 ihmisen voimin, on ISEAksen ydintä.